And welcome to Overtime on the Ice. I'm Jenna Harner, joined by Phil Bourque and Dejan Kovacevic. Guys, a huge win for the Penguins Saturday afternoon, a 1-0 shutout over the Rangers. There's a whole lot to talk about when it comes to this game, a lot we can start with. Bourque, we'll start with you. Just, I guess, what impressed you the most about this one, and how can this team build on this, knowing that they have a really tough stretch of games ahead?
Couple things really impressed me. I'll start with Tristan Jarry, first of all. He was the first star, and rightfully so, pitching the shutout and having a bounce-back game after getting pulled the game before. He was outstanding. He made some acrobatic saves, some Cirque du Soleil type of saves, if you will, also his rebound control, his puck handling. It was all on point. Igor Shesterkin on the other end was equally as good, and only one power play goal by Evgeny Malkin was able to squeeze by him. Also, I like that the Penguins, they got themselves in playoff mode. There's a little bit of nasty out there. There was some stinky gloves in the face. And I thought that for the most part, both teams realized, they looked at the standings. First time we've met each other this year. Let's establish something here. Let's get something out of the way real early, that every time you play us, it's going to be like this. And I like, for the most part, the Penguins dictated the terms against a team that, oh, by the way, they just might face in the first round of the playoffs.
It is going to be fun to kind of see how that shakes out because, again, looking at the division right now, the top four teams, there's that huge gap. So these are going to be playoff teams, and it's just a matter of who you're going to face. And so you kind of get that taste as we dive into real Metro Division play in this sense now. But, Dejan, what was it about Saturday's game for you that really just made a big impact along with Tristan Jarry?
Well, this is running the risk of stating the patently obvious. But when you're talking about dictating the terms, as Phil put it, where did that start today? 87. 87 was the first one out there doing some of that pushing and shoving afterward, and he's letting everybody know that's not just a message to the Rangers. It's not a message to Keandre Miller when he gives him that little shove with the stick at the side of the New York net. That's a message to everybody back on his bench. I'm doing this. They might forego the ballot to get me into the Hall of Fame. So if I'm doing this, you really need to be doing this. And just like that, what do you know? You started to see all of the Penguins getting chippy, getting in people's faces. When you're talking about the playoff version of the Penguins, you're talking about some of the more impressive victories they've had over the course of this season. Do you remember the one, Phil, early in November against up in Toronto? Remember that?
Yes,
in their faces for all 60 minutes. That's what happened today. That's what happened against the Rangers, and it was really impressive from a team-wide standpoint. And you got the sense with the way Jarry was playing, it might only take one.
No, you know, the Rangers, they brought in Barclay Goodrow, tough customer, won a cup in Tampa Bay. They brought in Ryan Reeves, right? Big old Revo, right? And
you
the
could
Penguins,
throw Jacob Trouba into that because he's all of a sudden turned into a menace since he left.
And you know what, Jenna? People knock the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I understand why. Do they have enough jam? Do they have enough toughness? Hey, listen, you got Brian Bourque and Ron Hextall steering the ship here, and you don't have a hammer to jump over the boards when Ryan Reeves is running around. Team toughness.
It's got to be everybody.
They were like a pack of wolves this afternoon, and that's how you have to play Pittsburgh Penguin playoff hockey.
Especially in the division.
And Dan, you mentioned, kind of the leadership from Sid and the rest of the team responding. We heard Tristan Jarry talk about that after the game. He said, it starts with him, Chris Letang, of getting Malkin, and it's that trickle-down effect, and they want to play that way. They want to kind of follow in the footsteps of what those guys are doing. So no doubt it's been fantastic to kind of see, him take control and say, hey, watch, I'm going to do this. I expect the rest of you guys to do this as well.
Well, it was a nice change too, Jenna.
Yeah.
Let's get real here because there hasn't been a whole lot.
No, there really hasn't. And that was one of the most physical games I think we've seen all season. Now, when it comes to, we talk about Sidney Crosby and the way his line is performing, we could talk for days about how well it's looked for them. But on the flip side of things, when you look at secondary scoring, it has been a struggle and then some. So many guys having, one goal in their last 12, 15, 17, 20-something games. I mean,
46.
You look at guys, oh my gosh, you want guys to score,
Zach.
You want guys to contribute. Yeah, Zach Aston-Reese, Jeff Carter, Brock McGinn, Danton Heinen, not like these guys aren't getting good chances, but they're just not finishing. They're not finding the back of the net. I guess starting off, how do you solve this issue here? I mean, take a look at that. 2 goals in 17. Aston Reese, none in 28. Dominic Simone, 2 in last 46. I mean, how do you fix this? It has to be simple here.
Well, I'm going to get started here, Phil. Even though I know that you happen to share this viewpoint, you need different players to an extent, okay? When you have numbers like that, up and down the list like that. You need to try different players. And I'm not going to suggest naively that the Penguins have some sort of spectacular cavalry that could come across I-80 from Wilkes-Barre. They don't. But I want to see more of Radim Zohorna. I liked what I saw of him in limited action this year and last year. 8 NHL games isn't enough to show me what he can do. I want to see Drew O'Connor. I get it. He's coming back from injury. They wanted to get him some games down there. He scored again today. Great. Get him up here. I don't care what position he plays. Eventually, you're going to see Teddy Bluger back. You're going to see Jason Zucker back. So some of those things will even out. Some of those names you just showed are going to come out just through osmosis. But in the same time, Jenna, what do the Penguins have to lose?
Yeah.
By trying, let's just see what these guys can do. It's not even a roster issue with a taxi squad that you can carry around.
No, it's exactly it. You know, there's so many opportunities for these guys to say, hey, let's see where you might potentially fit in. You know that right now, unless, I mean, these are the top 4 teams in the playoffs. The Metro team pretty much has it all shaken out unless something insanely catastrophic happens. And even then, yeah, I don't think there will be a lot of shifting there. It'll just be a matter of who plays who. So why not get that attempt to see, you know, how does a Drew O'Connor fit in here? Bourque, I know he's someone that you kind of have your eyes on.
I really like OC, and I like Big Z also.
Yes, you do.
I want to see both those guys in the lineup. Just give you the X's and O's. You asked the question, Jenna, how do you fix this? Is it simple? Well, keep it simple by driving to the net, not turning towards the boards, not getting out in the perimeter, and looking for a bounce to get things going. Now, guys like Brock McGinn, Jeff Carter, Danton Heinen, I think they're eventually going to score. But there's a bunch of other guys that I think are too comfortable. They're getting a jersey every single night. And it's almost like, as long as I get my hits, as long as I block a couple shots, as long as I create some energy, I'm going to get a jersey. I'm going to go out over the boards every single night. That's great. You might win a round in the playoffs, maybe, but you're not going to get to the promised land.
Nope.
And I'm only saying this because I've been there, man. I've been one of those guys that's been counted on to score. I wasn't a great goal scorer when I played, but I knew that Mario couldn't carry the load every single night, or Ronnie Francis, or Jaromir Jagr, that if I wanted to win a Stanley Cup, I had to chip in. Troy Loney had to chip in. Bob Airey had to chip in. And you did. Because that's how bad you want to win.
Yep.
It's been lacking here for years. Now, you go back to when you won in 16 and 17.
You had
when you had
Matt
Brian
Collin
Russ. You had Connor Sherry.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of guys that weren't counted on to score, but in the playoffs, they scored big goals. In 2017, guess how many goals Chris Kunitz scored in the playoffs?
I think
2.
I was going to say
he scored 2 goals. He got them both in Game 7 against Ottawa.
Yeah,
including
he did.
The double
I
overtime
remembered one of them.
That's all. He scored 2 goals in the playoffs. Both came in Game 7 against Ottawa. There's not enough guys that have that urgency to feel like, I have to score a goal here. I have to be a difference maker, or I'm coming out of the lineup.
Yeah, but Phil, what creates that urgency is the idea that you could come out of the lineup, you know? And when you get to 2016 and 2017, some of these names you just mentioned, where did they come from in midseason?
Right.
Okay, it was Jake Gensel, it was Scott Wilson, Tom Kuhnhackl, Connor Sherry, Brian Rust.
That's right.
All came up those 2 years, and they immediately put pressure on guys, including Kunitz, who talked about it openly at the time.
Yep.
He says, these guys are just coming in here and making us realize we could be at a whole different level.
You know, Jenna, that graphic that you showed, it physically almost pains me to see that. And you think, how are we second in our division with all that?
And when you have all that,
right?
exactly.
It's really amazing what the Penguins, and you just hope and you pray and you think, okay, these are really good hockey players we're talking about that have scored in the past in other places they've been. And you can have 1 or 2 guys going through what they're going right now. You can get through it. But you can't have 7 guys going through what they're going right now. They've got to find a way.
Well, hopefully within, our next show or the week after, in this tough stretch of games that they're coming into, they figure it out soon, because you got to figure it out, especially against, the Tampa Bays, the Carolinas, the Floridas, the Vegases of the league. No doubt about that. Well, thanks so much for joining us on Overtime on the Ice.